Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, the USA Today NFL Wire site that covers your Arizona Cardinals. Episode 688, recording on a Tuesday afternoon with my co-host, Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site, and it is, we get to talk about the Cardinals' second preseason game. It's our game review, and it was an ugly one, Seth, wasn't it? There is almost nothing that we can take away from that game other than it was a preseason game and we are one game closer, because there wasn't a whole lot of anything to like.
No, there wasn't. And, I was honestly flipping between the UFC card and watching the game because, as I've said before, there's not much you're going to glean from a live viewing of preseason games when you're trying to gauge what players have or where they're at in their process, right? And so you're watching enough to be able to talk about the game shortly after, and you're like, what we saw article. But for the most part, it's a fairly quick viewing, and you've got it's not like Sundays in the fall, right, where you're dialed in and there's nothing else going on. And so on first viewing it looked bad, and quite frankly on second viewing it didn't look much better. But I think there was some right. I think there was some things. There are some things that we could gain from all of this, and it's something that we'll talk about in this, because I've learned, again, obviously much different, but I've learned in my short time just coaching in high school that the reality becomes there are times, especially in scrimmages and then the preseason games, which is what basically a glorified scrimmage, that coaches will put players in a position to see what they can do, or, as we'll discuss in a little bit, what they can't do. And sometimes that looks bad, and that's okay, because it gives the coaches an idea of where they're at with players. So that's how I look at this game more than anything else. But we got a lot to discuss, and it'll be a nice quick show.
Yeah. Well, what I want to talk about first is the fact that, and we figured this would happen. We called this, is that when the Cardinals played their starters in the first preseason game, we said don't expect them to play the rest of the way, because they had the joint practice and they've never played, and it ended up being the case. They didn't play their starters after the joint practice. That's 3 years running now. The Cardinals haven't done that. And then the third preseason game, you don't play your starters. And so they had, a couple hours. They had a joint practice on Thursday. They ran, I think they said on the TV broadcast, 55 plays, which in its majority of the starters get. They treat the joint practices like they do game situations, and so it's pretty much with their starters. And the TV broadcast said they got 55 plays, and so the decision was made that they didn't need to get the work in the preseason game, and so they did all backups. And honestly, the question has been, well, don't they need the work Don't the starters need the work? Look at what's happened with those previous years. We're not learning anything. In my case, Mike, well, tell me your take on the Cardinals not playing their starters, because I was 100%. I never believed they were going to play in the first place.
Yeah, and again, based on the fact that they had a very physical and aggressive joint practice, like you said, there was no real need for it. I mean, we talked about it before the game. I would be surprised if these guys played, and some of them did. Right? We saw Will Johnson 8 plays.
Will Johnson and Akeem Davis Gaither. Those are the only two that we would consider likely starters. And we wondered if Will would get any work, and he barely played. Was it 8 snaps?
Yeah,
that was.
And to that point, right? Like, it was one of those situations where there was a specific reason he was playing, and they saw or didn't see what they wanted or didn't want to see, and got him out of there. It wasn't a game where it was like, hey, we need to see all this work. It was a game where it was like, hey, there's a couple things we want to see, like go out there, get some reps in, let's see how it looks. And again, I'm okay with that. Like, I think the joint practice is a little bit better of a thing. You and I talked about that on last Thursday, right? Like, the reality becomes you can simulate the game a little better and a little more controlled. And I know people will be like, well, you don't want the game to be controlled. No, but you do in preseason, right? In scrimmages.
For evaluation, you'd rather that. And it does take away some of the it reduces the risk that you have in live game action.
Right. And so that's one of the things that we looked at in this situation. And so for me, I like all of that. I'm of the opinion right now that they feel comfortable with where they're at, and that makes the fan base uncomfortable, because people are going, well, why would they feel good about where they're at? And it's like, hold on. It's okay that they feel positive about where they're at. You don't have to feel positive. I don't have to feel positive. But they feel comfortable with what they have and where they're at and where they're moving towards. And so those things make them look at a situation like a second preseason game against the Broncos, 2s, 3s, and on, and go, okay, not worth the risk for Kyler, for James, for these guys. And I've seen other people say, like, oh, well, yeah, our James Conner doesn't need the work, but like, what about Kyler Murray and Trey Benson? It's like, okay, so wait, you're going to put Kyler Murray out there, but you're not going to put, let's say, Paris Johnson Jr. out there.
That's nonsense.
Sounds brilliant.
Do not put Kyler behind your second team line in the preseason. No.
And so for me, it's like, look, it's an all or nothing situation. And if you're going to say, like, hey, this guy doesn't need it, I'm comfortable with that. And that's fine. And again, I'm not a huge preseason guy anyways. Like, if you have a joint practice, I should say I'm not a huge preseason guy, because again, I don't know how much you can glean from preseason. You've got desperate guys trying to make rosters. You've got other guys just trying to stay healthy, right? Like, there's a big discrepancy in who's putting in effort and who's not. And go ahead.
And all I was going to say is that maybe there was the slightest chance that Jonathan Gannon wanted to get his starters some work on Saturday. It didn't make any sense to put the starters in just to put the starters in. If Sean Payton wasn't ever going to start his starters, get his starters play, you learn. And we mentioned this in the last show. You learn nothing if you got your starters going against 2s. And it's honestly, publicly, it's a lose-lose situation, because if they look good, we're like, well, you do Morgan's backups. And then if they don't look great, then you're like, oh, crap, they suck. Everyone, fire everyone.
Right. That's exactly what it is, Justin. Like, to me, like you said, it was literally no reason. Like, okay, as soon as Sean Payton called the audible of like, hey, we're not playing our starters, and there was never an audible, right? Like that was what he had
That
planned.
was the plan. It's just
Right.
he's the one who said it.
But as soon as he made that call, yeah, you and I were like, okay, there's nothing to worry about. And I get it. Again, guys, I understand. Like there are people that'll be like, no, they need the work. Okay, that's your opinion, and that's fine. You 1000% can have that opinion. I don't think it's a negative opinion. I don't think it's a positive opinion.
Well, and what we've learned over the course of many years of watching football, there's not necessarily a right or a wrong way to do the preseason. Because there's teams who succeed doing almost nothing in the preseason. There's teams who succeeded who do everything in the preseason. There are teams who are great in the preseason who are terrible in the regular season. I'm old enough to remember many years where they go 4-0 and 3-1 in the preseason, then win 5 games for the entire regular season. I'm like, the preseason is like, you can't look at, like, it's literally situational and it's individual. Like you're looking, like you want late in the game, ideally, you want the game to be in a situation, you want your starters to compete well, and you want the guys at the back of the roster doing winning behaviors, and you want them to be able to put the team in a position to win, because winning is fun. But ultimately, it's individual. You're looking at individual things. You're evaluating every player. You're evaluating rotations. You're even evaluating how you coach and the type of plays that you call in those situations. I mean, it's all like the outcome of preseason games is literally nothing. It's literally nothing, which is why people laughed. Remember the winning streak that the Ravens had. 23 straight preseason wins, and people were mocking John Harbaugh for that, because, and he's a hardball and he wants to win. He's like, we compete, we want to win. I'm like, it's not that deep, guys. It's not that deep.
Right. It's not. And that's the hard part. And, so much of it just comes down to the reps, right? And something we'll talk about shortly is like how kind of limited or boxed in the team is, or the team puts themselves in. And people, go, oh man, I can't believe they did X, Y, or Z, or didn't do X, Y, or Z. And it's like, it's the preseason. I can, like, again, like I hate always going back to high school stuff with this, but like, for instance, when we have a scrimmage this week at Jess's school, by the way, when we have a scrimmage this week, like they're not going to show anything. They're going to run their base sets. They're going to run their base coverages. They might blitz every once in a while, but like it's going to be very contained, because one, you can't hit the quarterback, and at least in the preseason you can hit a quarterback, right? Like yes. In these scrimmages and stuff, you can't. And so teams utilize this and go, okay, like here are the, if you're going to get 50 snaps, or what'd you say, the Cardinals had 55 snaps in the joint practice?
That is what they said in the broadcast.
Okay, so 55 snaps. You know what happens in those? They go, okay, we're going to go, we're going to run these plays. And like you said, in these scenarios, right? Like in these situations, and this is what we want to see. And what's even crazier sometimes? The defense will go, okay, we'll give you this look so you can get the look you want, right? Like, so in those joint practices, for instance, there might be a scenario where, Petzing's like, hey, we're doing this. Can you guys give us this look? Right. Or vice versa. Right. Like the defense is like, hey, can you show us something out of this? We want to try something out of this look, or see what we need, how we need to adjust out of this look. Like that's how it's done. And so like when you're doing that, it's so much more valuable than a preseason game, when you're like, all right, well, we're going to run X, Y, and Z, and then a team like we joked about a couple weeks ago, right? The first year with Cliff and the Raiders, a team gets a wild hair, and all of a sudden they're bringing pressures from all over, and they're doing wild stuff that most teams would never do in a preseason game, but they were trying to make a statement, and like you said, like with Harbaugh, it's like there's a lot of teams that look at the preseason and go, hey, I need to, we want to see this worked on. Like we just want to see us working in, I'm just going to throw something out there, cover 2, right? And we're not going to worry about anything else. And we're going to run cover 2. And the other team goes, hey, they're just in cover 2. Let's run this, this, and this, knowing that it beats cover 2 easily. And the fans will go, what the hell? Why are we just getting killed in this? And it's like, well, they're obviously trying to work on something. Like, I get it. It's annoying, but it's done 9 times out of 10. And I won't say every time, but 9 times out of 10, it's done with a purpose and for a purpose. And so, yeah, like I just, the overall, like, did it look good? Jess and I have talked about that. Did it look good? Hell no. Like, absolutely, like, no, it did not look good. In fact, it looked the opposite of good. Is it something to be concerned about? Well, if the 27 top players get injured for the Cardinals, absolutely. Like, it's very concerning.
And they don't game plan they don't have a plan for particular looks or things. That's the other thing, is that they literally don't game plan. They
don't make
offensive game plan for themselves. They have their defensive game plan for themselves, but they are not studying film of the other team on how to counter these offensive and defensive looks. It's just nonsense. It's nonsense, I tell you. Coming up next on the Rise of Red podcast, Mr. Our Cardinals Talk of the Web. Something else fans are upset about, and that was a revelation that honestly shouldn't be too surprising. That's coming up next on Rise of Red. We're back on the Rise of Red podcast, Mr. Our Cardinals Talk on the Web, episode 688. We're talking about the Cardinals' 27-7 preseason loss to the Denver Broncos over the weekend at Empower Field at Mile High. Jonathan Gannon came out and said after the game that neither Nick Rallis nor Drew Petzing called plays in that game. Rallis, who typically is on the sideline calling plays, he was up in the booth. He didn't reveal who it was, and that was one of the first things that kind of mentioned, is that in that loss is like the play calls were by someone else, and everyone's like, ha 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 ha. Well, don't do that again. And Josh Weidfuss, I don't know where he got the information. He obviously got it, that it was Ryan Smith, their cornerbacks coach, was calling the defensive plays, and Drew Terrell, their receivers coach and passing game coordinator, was calling the offensive plays in that game. Interesting note is that, that isn't, by the way, new. That's not a new concept for the Cardinals. After all, Bruce Arians used to do it every preseason. Harold Goodwin would call plays in the preseason, giving his staff experience they needed. Heck, Cliff Kingsbury had Kyler Murray do it one game. And so it's not uncommon, and it isn't as simple as saying, oh, the offense and the defense were bad, don't ever let them call plays again, or even the notion that some people say, this is a win now year, what are we doing? We can't afford. Like, come on, guys. The Cardinals coordinators, Drew Petzing and Nick Rallis, they've been calling plays now for the last 2 years. Is taking a game off in an exhibition really that important? I will again say absolutely not. And you're giving your staff experiences. You're also preparing them, because remember, just a couple of years ago, when Cliff Kingsbury got COVID, they had to scramble and go to play calling, where they had Spencer Whipple and Sean Kugler handling offensive play calls. And so in a way, it's preparing yourself, and it's developing your coaches to give them a taste. And in doing so, it gives the coach, like Jonathan Gannon and his coordinators, ways to evaluate their coaches too, and as a way to evaluate whether they're on the same page. Talk about, why'd you call this play, and things like that. And again, it's the preseason. If you're going to, like, that's exactly when you do that. Just like you play the backups, you play the backup players. Why not let the backup coaches do something once in a while? It's not going to impact the regular season.
No, and again, I look at this as like a couple fold things. Like, first off, you nailed a lot of it. You know, you want to give those young guys experience. The other thing is this: just think about this, and maybe it's arrogance, maybe it's, I don't know what the word would be, but what happens if Drew Petzing and Nick Rallis, one of or both, get poached after this year? Like, don't you want to know if you have the answer in house and ready
Right.
to
Well,
to
and have
go?
them have done the play calling in that particular scheme or whatever. I don't know. Like, or would they run a difference? I don't. But yeah, you want people to be in place. You want them to have a plan in place, just like you want to have a plan in place for your players. You want to have a plan in place for your coaches.
Right. And so I'm, you know, again, I just think it's interesting that there was such a crazy like hatred towards it, because, like, here's the reality, and this is what I was going to talk about. Like, do you think that Drew Terrell was like, just came in and like created his own play sheet and was just calling plays all willy-nilly? Or do you think he and Drew Petzing sat down and, like you said, like, put the preseason game plan together, and he's like, hey, here's your plays in this situation, here's your plays in this situation, like, you know, you do what you feel is best for these situations, and that's how we'll move forward. Like, that's how they do it. That's how they do it on game. It's not like
It's like on, like, the offense is like Drew's like, oh, it's 3rd and 1. What do I do? What do I do? No, they have a play sheet. They have a play sheet for scenarios. So they've got their they've got their 3rd and 4th and 1. They've got their 2nd and 5 to set. They have literally a set of plays for every scenario. And then they just call one of those plays that they've practiced. And they don't call plays that they haven't practiced dozens of times to success. Because if they practice like the plays that they had originally and they suck in practice, you know what they immediately do? They scratch that from the game plan.
Right. And that goes back to my point earlier, right? Like, they might have looked at this and gone like, hey, we want to, specifically defensively, like with Will Johnson or something like that. Like, hey, we want to, I would wager that this was something that they went into the season with, is like, hey, we're comfortable with Will in, you know, these coverages, but like, we want to see him try to work in these coverages. So, like, let's get him looks in these coverages during the season, or like during the preseason, see where he's at in his development, so we know how often we can go this route during the season. And they have their own grades, you know, so people going, oh, look at his PFF grades, they're terrible. Okay. So, okay. But you have to look at it and go, okay, this is what we're seeing in that situation, or this is what we've seen from him. So that's how we'll grade it. And like you said, oh, we're not ready to run this with him yet, or like, okay, he's a little further along than we expected. Like, let's keep this in our back pocket for later on. And so, like, those are all things that come with the preseason, right? Like things like, oh, can we run, you know, these coverages? And I don't want to get too in the weeds on coverage calls, but like, can we run these coverages? Can we do this? Can we run, you know, quarters match with him, or with our secondary, like with our big 4, big 5, whatever, however they want it. Like, can we do that, or is that not something we can do? You know, and so all of these things are will be stuff that they look at and evaluate before they get into the season. And Rallis goes, okay, I know in this situation what we can't run, or like what our bread is buttered at, right? Like, all of that is what they do. And so Drew Terrell or who was it that allegedly called the defense? I don't remember. Off the top.
Ryan Smith, cornerbacks coach.
Yeah, Ryan Smith. Like, like again, do you think that they went in? They're like, "Hey, we're gonna run, this blitz scheme," and the players are like, "Coach, we've never ran that before. I don't care. Let's run it." Like,
do it anyway.
Right?
Do it anyway.
Like, no. He and Raul sat down and go, "Okay, these are the calls that we want to make. These are the calls we want to see. Like, let's make sure we get these looks." And specifically, let's make sure we get these players in this position to see how they react. And all of that is how preseason is supposed to work.
Yes.
Like, do you think, I want to ask you, because, like, obviously this is a interesting topic to us. Do you think Bills, and I know we can't compare ourselves to the Bills because the Bills have been to the last 6 Super Bowls? Oh wait, no, that's the Chiefs. The Bills have never been to the Super Bowl with Josh Allen and Sean McDermott, but they're infinitely more successful than the Cardinals. So, we can't compare. But do you think Bills fans are concerned that they lost 38-0 to the Bears? Like, do you think?
I'm sure there are some, but I know a few Bears fans who were going bonkers over Caleb Williams' 97-yard touchdown drive against Buffalo's starting defense. And I'm going, preseason.
Yeah.
Preseason. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Well, and for me, it comes down to this as well. There's the debate of execution versus play call. And I always say this, and it's not to, if we ever criticize a play call, the only time we ever criticize a play call is because it didn't work, right? If a play call works, it's a good play, right? And we'll take a couple of playoffs ago when the Lions were in position and they had that 4th and 1 call, and they had their third down back in, what is Renner or something. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's a third string running back, but he plays in that particular package. It's like having Amari DeMarcado, and they got the look they wanted. He was wide open in the flat, and he dropped the ball. It's like, what a terrible play call, because you didn't get the ball into your best player's hand. Like, what do you mean? That play was wide open, and that's a player who, like, they practice these plays, and so I've always, like, it's always hard. It's like, well, they need to be a better play caller, or are we saying that the play wasn't there, that the defense just had an answer for it every single time? Or did the play have just have a bad result because the guys on the field didn't execute it? Like, was there a wide open guy, or did he not run deep enough? Like, and so that's always like, well, what are we looking at? Like, were the backups bad offensively and defensively because of bad play calls, or had the starters been in the game with those same play calls, would have they just done better?
Right, exactly. And again, like, what was lost? And I know people will go, what was
3 hours of our life? Well, that's what was lost.
I mean, that's why you got the UFC fights going on at the same time, Jess. You don't have to worry about it. But, like, here's my question, genuinely, like, what was lost? I think there was more gain from it, because you gain information of, like, all right, maybe this guy isn't ready, whether it's the play caller or the player, right? We can't use this. This is not an effective for our team. Or if a starter goes down, we have to scrap these plays, or this list of coverages, or this list of blitzes, or like, it gives you information. That's what the whole point is. It's not to go 3-0. I mean, it
would be wonderful if if the starters dominated the starters, and then the backups dominated the backups, and they just looked amazing every single time, and then it rolled into the regular season. But we know it doesn't work that way.
But also, let me ask you this: what is gained by the Cardinals beating the Chiefs 20-17 the week before?
A warm and fuzzy feeling.
Right, exactly. That's all it is. It's like, oh, this makes me feel like they're going to be good this year. It's like, well, hopefully, I agree. Like
Well, then the
that.
Seahawks blew the Chiefs out, so now we got to feel, oh, the Seahawks are good.
Yeah, the Seahawks are way better because they won their meaningless preseason game by a lot. But dude, think about this: all the people that are like, "Oh my god, the Seahawks offense is so much better than we expected." Is it? Like, like that's your genuine takeaway from this game is that the Seahawks offense is that much better than you expected. Like, why would that be your takeaway?
Clint Kubiak is God. Yes, that's what we're doing.
Well,
That's
and so Jess, I even saw this. Like, this is the craziest thing about preseason to me. Right? I even saw this. I even saw that Gray Zabel, who you and I both liked coming out, think he's going to be a decent player. Gray Zabel owned Chris Jones.
oh geez.
I'm like,
Chris Jones was trying. He was definitely trying.
well, no, he didn't play.
No. Someone said that.
Yeah.
Jones didn't play. Oh.
So like that's the thing. So like people are literally like passing around a clip and they're like, look at him own Chris Jones. And I'm like, that's not Chris Jones. So what are you looking at? And so that's my whole thing.
Oh my gosh.
Is like we're just creating this like loop of like, oh, this is what's important. And it's like, well, no, it's not, because like what you're saying happened didn't even happen. Right? Like, yeah. So again, does it matter? I mean, maybe. I mean, George Karlaftis played 6 snaps, so maybe it was important.
It only ends up, and the funny is it only matters if it ends up mattering, right? If the Cardinals are bad this year or are disappointing or don't live up to expectations, we can always look back at the preseason and just verify our concerns. We can just back it right up and say, this is why, because the starters didn't play. And had Drew Petzing called the offense against the Broncos, then their offense would have been 10 points better against the Seahawks. I don't know. But I don't know. Football is far more complicated. Like success, winning football games in the NFL in the regular season. It's so complicated. Football is it's a simple game, but it's a very, very complicated game. And so there's so many factors to everything. But coming up next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, that's our Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's see if we can talk a little good, and a little bit of good in that preseason game. That's coming up next on Rise of Sierra. We're back on the Rise Up Sierra podcast, that's our Cardinals Talk on the Web. Talking about the positives. I guess the one positive that we get out, the 100%, is that we're a game closer, and none of the important players got hurt. But outside of that, I can point to really kind of two things that I can take away as a positive, right? And for me, that's once again Jacoby Brissett looking solid. And I'm like, I'm going to pump the brakes, guys. Let's remember, Jacoby Brissett is a grizzled veteran who has been a starting quarterback. And what has he done in 2 weeks? He's got 3 touchdowns and 5 possessions. Against whom, guys? Against whom? Backups. And while that is encouraging to see the way that he operated the offense, the throws that he made, all of that is good. But it isn't hyperbolic, guys. So he looked good playing against backups, and that's exactly what he should have done. They believe they have a good backup quarterback, and a good backup quarterback should look really good against backups. We also know, because we've seen it, that Jacoby Brissett leading a first-string offense against first-string defenses is pretty just fine. Nothing special.
I mean, he's been at best average, and we, kind of went over the stats the other day. But yeah, I mean, you and I are on the same page. I mean, Brissett's looked good enough. I think there was a couple offensive guys that you look at, they're like, hey, they had a good day. John Gaines coming back, playing right guard, didn't look bad. That was good to see. He's still kind of light in the pants in terms of being able to get downhill run blocking, but his movement skills continue to be positive for his ability in pass protection, right? So those are all good things. And then, first game as an Arizona Cardinal, Simi Fehoko, everything you kind of had hoped he would be is wide receiver 5, right?
That's well, and here's the thing. I'm getting the feeling, and I'll say this: when they signed him and I saw the contract, it told me like when they guarantee salary, a good portion of it, they're planning on that player being on the team. And I feel there's almost been on the television broadcast a little bit of propaganda going on, just a little bit of push the narrative, because outside of the two broadcasts, have you heard any reporter, any fan, or anybody even mention Simi Fehoko in practices or anything?
Right.
And
I know he was injured for a
right. He was injured, but even on the first broadcast, they made it like Simi Fehoko's out, but he's a really good he does really well on special teams. And what's funny about that is, you know how many special team snaps he's played in his career? 208. He has not been a full-time special teams player. He might be good at special teams. I'm not saying he's not. And I believe that's why he was signed. I think based on his body type, I believe he was signed specifically to be their Zach Pascal. Right, he was their Zach Pascal to fill that role as a big-bodied receiver who can do things, and he does have some upside because he's long at 6'4". He's speedy. He's got sub 4.45 speed as a 6'4", 220 guy. So he's a big, fast guy, but nobody was talking about him, and so they mentioned this like 4 different times in the first 2 preseason games where they talked about his special teams play. Now he did look good. That touchdown catch that he had was a good one. That was a really nice play. It was a good throw by Brissett, and it was a very nice play to have to go up for it in the end zone. That wasn't an easy play, but that's a play that you want your receivers to do, and he made a play on special teams, and I think that's what we needed to see. But I've said all along that I think Fehoko is going to make this roster. And I think there was some narrative pushing to make sure that fans know who he is, that he's a good special teams player, because he doesn't make a ton of money, but I think his salary is 1.17 million is the minimum for it, but they guaranteed $1 million of it. And when you see the Cardinals guaranteeing $1 million plus in salary to player, you can almost always pencil them in for the final roster.
Correct. And so, you look at it, you and I weren't surprised by his role or his abilities. We were just kind of surprised that nobody thought that he was going to be on this team, or like that he was a guy that didn't get conversations about being on this team. So it was interesting to me.
Yeah, and outside of that,
I want to shout out. Yeah, I want to shout out Keon Bars. I thought he played well. So
yes, and what that's worth when you're the last guy in the depth chart on the defensive line,
right?
It's not worth a whole lot. But
right, but I feel like guys like Bars are tough because like this is the only like NFL film they're gonna have, so like yes. It's when they do play well, I feel like it is cool because
it's worth mentioning because that'll get them a tryout somewhere else.
Because like you look at Michael Walker, who had a really nice game, right? He's going to be on the roster, so like him dominating the like backups of the Broncos it's not impressive. That's kind of what and again, I'm not taking anything away from what Brissett did, but same type of thing, right? Like that's the expectation. A guy like Bars, who got signed super late in the process,
played in the UFL,
hasn't really had any NFL success. To see him have a decent game, you're like, oh, okay, good job, congrats, bro.
Now Mike Walker was a freaking starter 2.5 years ago. He was a full-time starter for the Falcons. So
right, exactly.
And so yeah, that'll be interesting. But yeah, outside of that, there wasn't a much to be there were a couple of good things. It was nice to see Andre Bocelli, make a couple of catches. He seems to stick around forever. Isaiah Weaver had good and bad. On the good side, there were no turnovers at all. So they kind of shored that up. Blake Gillikin, he's got a monster. He's a great punter. He's a very good punter. The 70 yards in the air punt was unreal. And then the positive from before the game when Teo Mackey caught Chad Ryland drill a 72-yarder. And I don't know if I believe this, but he said that in practice with a snapper and a holder, he hit from 80.
Right. Crazy.
That's like, have we reached? I don't think, and we had Cam Little of the Jaguars hit a 70-yarder in the first preseason week. Like, that's like in a game situation, that seems crazy. Like, remember when wasn't it a 70-yarder that Kingsbury had Prater try at the end of a half, and it just was abysmal.
Correct.
that was abysmal. Anyway, coming up next on the Res Series podcast, special Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's dive into the bad. What are the things that we didn't like? Who are we more down on, and of the like? That's coming up next on Rise of C Red. We're back on the Rise of C Red podcast, special Cardinals Talk on the Web, to talk about the final segment, which is the bad. There was a lot of bad, obviously, but who are we down on? And I think I want to point out, number one, that I think the biggest bad that came out of this was the knee injury to Hayden Conner. Like, Hayden Conner, their 6th-round pick, has been playing center and guard, and he injures his knee. Now, I don't know how serious it is, but when Gannon says he's going to miss some time, that tells me weeks and weeks. And so, and it happened to Christian Jones last week. And so we're in a situation where two guys who were at least one of the two was going to be on the roster as depth. Now, neither one is likely to make the roster, or they'll have to do some finagling, because NFL teams can, before they make cuts or as they're making cuts, like the traditional way where it had to be before, is that only a player is only eligible to return from IR if they were on the initial 53. So they had to be on the roster for a day. And so but now over the last 2 years, the league has said you can designate up to 2 players for return, and then another 8. So you get a total of 10. So the Cardinals might need to burn both their designated for returns. Like last year, they did that for both Darius Robinson and Christian Jones. They put them on IR before or as they were making final cuts, so they didn't have to burn a spot on the 53. And then Elijah Jones, cornerback, they kept him on the roster for a day and then put him on IR. Then they re-signed Chris Barnes at linebacker. And I'm guessing, if I had to guess, that both of those guys are going to miss significant time, whether it's a good chunk of the beginning of the season or if it's season ending. My guess is both will be on IR, and that kind of changes the roster for the offensive line and the depth, right? Because we were counting on, like, I feel like that, and especially if we think that Will Hernandez is going to start the year on PUP, which I believe he will. 6 guys are locks, and I think 8. Well, I think the 8-man rotation of the offensive line is set. You've got your starters. You've got Kelvin Beachum. I think Nick Leverett has locked down the guard backup job, and John Gaines is going to be the backup center. So I think they got their 8. It's just a matter of who's going to be 9 and who's going to be maybe 10. And I think, and I was projecting both Jones and Connor would be those guys, and those will be likely inactive all season. But they're not going to start on the roster, I bet. And that's a bummer, because because it feels like what we're hearing, that they really kind of like Connor. And despite the 6th-round pick, they like him enough to get him a lot of work at center and to give him that depth that they need. And so that knocks down changes the roster. And I'm actually going to be putting write an article either today or tomorrow about the fact, okay, these are some injuries. These are injuries that are going to impact the final roster decisions, because you've got 4 guys on pup. You've got Justin Jones in his knee. We don't know how serious that is. We've got Christian Jones in his knees. We've got Hayden Conner's knee. So there's these injuries will impact how the final 53 is put together.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw what Gambo said today, right? That it sounds like Walter Nolan probably starts the season on the designated to return list.
Guess what? I called it.
So if that does happen, again, that's speculation from Gambo, right? So we'll label it as such. But with that information, you have to look at it and go, okay, well, so who's the other guy, right? Is it Christian Jones or is it Hayden Conner, or do they try to, like you said, sneak one through then put him on?
And even with Nolan, they don't have to burn one on him because he's going to start on pup. That doesn't count. It's because it would be, they don't need to put him on IR. That would be dumb. They don't need to put him on IR.
Yeah. So, where do they, the way that it's all setting up is, again, that this is it's a depth thing, right? Like, you have to figure out who, I don't want to say matters more, but who would be more impactful if you can only designate one at the time, let's say. Because like you said, with Will Hernandez looming and Nick Leverett having played well, like you said, is Hayden Conner as important as Christian Jones in the scope of all of this? That's how I would look at it. That, because you probably don't want to keep one of Josh Fryer or Jeremiah Byers, right? And obviously, like, the other, Kelvin Beacham's going to be on the roster. We know that.
Yeah.
And so it just becomes this like puzzle of how you get to that first 53. And like you said, like there are ways around it, right? Like Jones could, or Connor can make the roster, and then you put him on IR after. But I mean, you would think that Jones, just based on what they have on the roster, would be the higher priority, right? Like, I know Hernandez is you and I kind of joked about it in a text message, like, physically looking, Hernandez does not look close, but
looking, he's a big guy. He was looking extra large.
Yeah, like he has not missed many meals or beers. So you look at that and you go, okay, maybe, but you and I've said all along, like, he's probably not ready till October anyways, right? Like,
right.
So
and the Cardinals have a situation here where they have a lot of, and I'm gonna nitpick on this because Gambo's saying that they might have to start, that no one's going to start the season on IR designated to return. No, 100%. That's a bad way to. They're not going to do that because he doesn't need to go on IR unless they activate him off of PUP. If they activate him off of PUP before roster cutdowns, which would be foolish, they don't have to burn one of those because guys on PUP are already protected. And if you keep them on PUP, they're going to miss 4 games, but all of them are eligible to return. All of them are eligible to return. You don't have to burn. You don't have to burn a guy, one of their IR designations. So that's going to be really interesting because of all those guys on PUP. Yeah, but yeah, lots of stuff. So you continue on. Sorry,
that's what I was going to say though. Is like, that's what makes the difference, because I feel like if they, for some reason, they do activate him, and they did designate him to return, right?
That'd be stupid. Like, why?
But that would basically mean that you only have, like you said, one other choice to make. So who would win that argument?
Yeah.
I genuinely don't know. I don't know.
And we don't, also the other thing we don't know, we just don't know how severe the knee injuries are. Maybe they were season ending to begin with. It doesn't even matter.
Right. Well, and that's always the fun thing with Gannon, right?
Like if he's gonna miss the year, you could just tell us. You could just tell us.
Right. Well, that's
Like,
my thing. Is
the whole Bilal Nichols thing. I'm like, I will be shocked if he plays this year. The fact that he suffered a neck injury in week 6 and still can't practice. I'm like,
well, and
his career's cooked. Basically, his career's cooked.
Well, you know me. I'm like, what are we hiding? Like, who cares? Let's just get this. Like, that's always been my philosophy with this stuff. It's like you're not like there's literally no, nothing gained by doing that, right? Like, oh gosh, Christian Jones has a torn, blah blah blah, and is going to miss the season. Like, oh god, that surprised the Saints. No. like
exactly.
I've just never understood that flaw. And I've always been with you on this thing. Like, just such a hokey thing to do. But it seems like post COVID, like that became kind of the standard for them, right? Like, oh, we're just not going to give out any information. It's like, who cares?
Anybody else in terms of play? I think in terms of players, I thought Clayton Tune has really
not
he has not helped himself, and we lauded him a year ago. Because from rookie preseason to last preseason, there was a jump. He's not looked any better. Like, he doesn't look any better. And you've told me before the show, he looks abjectly worse than he did. So I'm like, I think he hurt himself. Like, what do you think about the linebacker situation with Mike Walker and Owen Papo? People are saying cut them both. I'm like,
I still think I just don't understand why people. I don't think I said the week before. I think Papo's probably done, right? Like, but again, I don't get.
I think it's a toss up between Walker and Papo because both do well on special teams.
Right.
Walker is an established special teams player. Papo did really well on special teams for him, but he's also younger and extremely athletic. And whoever's going to be in that fourth inside backer spot on the roster, they're only playing special teams. And so I think it comes down to that. But for me, it's a toss up. And Papo is his struggle. Does it feel like he struggled more this preseason than he did all last preseason?
Yeah, and it's not shocking in the sense that they probably have asked him to do more or put more on him. And so that's a common thing that happens as preseason goes. And it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning, right? Like, hey guys, this is what happens with preseasons and things like that. Like, you end up putting more on a guy and you learn, like, oh, they can't do something or they can do something, or and so for Papo, it's been, unfortunately, like, oh, this is not what he's good at, we shouldn't, or he's not doing what we expected or growing like we expected him to. Like, this is unfortunately an instance where he's going to be, I don't want to say that they're going to move on, but like, that we might have to start to look to move on, right? Like, because he's not taking the steps we were hoping that he would. And that all, that's all just stuff that comes with it. And trust me, we all want to see these guys succeed. Like, we have no skin in the game of, like, I told you Owen Papo was going to suck. Like, nobody, like, we want to see these guys be good. We want to see them succeed. And when they don't, it becomes, it sucks, because you're always hopeful. And, I talk about it all the time. These day 3 picks, those are the players that really make turn teams from being good to great, right? Like when you start to get players on day 3 that are not just impact players, but they become like linchpins in your team and what you do, like you're a good franchise then. And that's what we've talked about with Cardinals. They just haven't, with this group yet, they haven't got there. And it's not unheard of that it hasn't happened yet. I mean, we're talking about year 3 of a basically a complete rebuild. So like now would be the time to start seeing dividends pay with guys like Rabbit and potentially Cody Simon and you know, those guys taking the bull by the horns. And it's also in the same way, upsetting is probably not the right word, but like it gets pretty annoying that some of these guys just have bad luck with health or whatever, right? Like that
100%.
that you know, you've got this and then all of a sudden it's like crap. Like
Yeah.
he's hurt now. Like, so all of those things come into it and come into play. And that's why you have to, you know, that's why the team in and of itself is so vital, and the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts, because you have to get to that point and they're still working through it. But, you know, they should have played the starters. So.
And with that, we will wrap up this edition of the Rise of Syria podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web. We will be back later this week where we look ahead to the final preseason game, what we're going to look for, maybe. I guess what we can do then, we will also give our 53-man roster projections before the game. I've already got mine up on the site from earlier this week, but we will not get on before roster cuts. In fact, we'll probably record about the time final rosters are released. Hopefully they don't make us wait forever. Otherwise, it'll be ridiculous. But either if we're recording at night, it'll definitely be the case. But that'll wrap this one. We don't know if the Cardinal starters are going to play in the finale. Don't count on it. They've never done it. So with that, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. We'll be back again soon. Thanks for listening, as always.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms, so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be red, see red, and of course, Rise up, see red.